Exposed, for spine-chilling true stories of haunted trespassers and sinister secrets discovered. The sun dipped behind the Phoenix skyline, casting long shadows over the quiet suburb where Claire lived with her 2 children. The air buzzed with the sounds of cicadas, but something else lingered, a discomforting whisper that nudged at her instincts. After another grueling night shift as a nurse, she just wanted to slip into bed unnoticed. But fate had other plans. Tonight, laughter echoed from her children's room, a sound that should have felt comforting, but instead, it churned her insides. As she crept toward the door, muffled giggles twisted into whispers. "He's the best," her daughter exclaimed, innocence laced with an edge of fear. Claire's heart raced. Who was he? She opened the door to find both kids wide-eyed, sharing whispers about their new imaginary friend. Dark shadows flickered at the edge of the window, memories of local police reports surfacing in her mind. Missing children on this very street. It felt like plunging into icy water, the fear gripped her mercilessly. This wasn't just childhood imagination, it was a sinister beckoning. Days passed, and the oddities multiplied. Craig, her youngest, clutched a small dust-covered trinket, a piece of broken glass he insisted the friend had gifted him. Laughter continued, only now it rang hollow, slithering into her psyche. Her phone vibrated, revealing cryptic group messages from a forgotten neighborhood chat about disappearances. Panic rose like bile in her throat. She had unwittingly stepped into an unwelcoming reality. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The following night, panic gripped Claire when a note slipped under her door: "Stay out of what doesn't concern you." Strangled whispers teased her mind. The shadows closed in, hungry and dark, the laughter of her children a knife twisting deeper into her chest. Betrayal brewed beneath the facade of her neighbor Frank's friendly smile. Then it happened. Suddenly, in the midnight quiet, her children vanished. Claire's heart thundered, the world was tilted off its axis. Frank rushed to her side, his once reassuring presence now a jagged shadow against the chill of danger. She ran through the neighborhood, desperate, questioning everything she thought she knew. The tranquil suburban bubble had burst, revealing lurking dangers in every dark corner. In a frenzied moment, she stumbled upon a hidden cellar, the kind of place whispered about in drunken rants, a tomb of buried secrets. The air crackled with hostility, a darkness that thrummed under her skin. She grasped the door, intent on uncovering the truth. But as she turned, that familiar warmth brushed against her. Frank stood behind her. "Let me help you." But the innocence in his eyes felt like a lie, an invitation to stay in shadows where light dare not tread. Could she trust him? Or would the shadows swallow her too before she could save her children? The question hung, thick as the oppressive air. The air in the cellar was suffocating. Claire's chest tightened as fear wove tighter around her. Frank's presence, once a balm, now felt like a snare. Shadows stretched like fingers beneath the door, clawing at her sanity. "Trust me," he repeated, his voice urgent but soothing, slick like oil. "We can find them together." She hesitated, weighing the desperation in her heart against the deep, throaty whisper in her mind warning her to run. This wasn't just about trust. It was about survival. Where did they go? She rasped, fighting to keep herself steady, to maintain control. "They're closer than you think," he retorted, moving toward her. She stepped back, heart hammering like a frantic drum. "No. You don't know where they are." A fleeting grin broke across Frank's face, twisted and unnatural. "The cellar holds secrets, Claire. Not just yours." With dread pooling inside her, she glanced back at the darkened corners, the shadows shifting almost as if alive. She felt as though she was on the edge of some dreadful precipice, teetering between life and an abyss, the weight of terrifying knowledge pressing down on her. "No," she whispered, shaking her head as if to ward off the darkness encroaching. She needed to stand firm, even as the very walls whispered and moaned in reply. Suddenly, a soft thud echoed from within the cellar, like something heavy shifting. She froze, pulse racing. "Did you hear that?" Frank moved with a predatory light in his eyes. "Let me show you," he urged, but she wouldn't follow him further into that shadowed abyss. Instead, she yanked open the door, determined to escape. A gust of wind pulled her back, the darkness recoiling as she stumbled. Frank's voice dropped to a harsh whisper, "If you leave now, you may never find them." "No." She spun around. "You're lying." His face contorted with frustration, and suddenly, the warmth of the simple neighborly facade turned into something sharp and menacing. "You think you're strong enough to face what's waiting for you? You won't survive alone." With a swift motion, she bolted out of the cellar, breathless, and dashed into the night. The streetlights buzzed ominously, casting an unsettling glow on empty streets that felt far too familiar but now seemed alien. Each plodding step echoed louder, bouncing off the silent homes. Claire ran, heart a wild drum in her ears, the taste of panic iron at the back of her throat. She needed to find her kids. She needed to make sense of the chaos and fear threatening to swallow her whole. Footsteps crunched behind her. Her breath caught. Was it Frank? Or something else? "Mom!" The sound came from somewhere ahead, clear and desperate, laced with undeniable terror. Claire's heart leaped. "Craig!" She lunged toward the voice, a lifeline thrown into the depths of impending shadows. Yet the closer she got, the more the voice twisted, muffled and distorted. "Mom, help!" A refrain that was more cry than call, echoing down the street. The darkness pressed down on her. She had to move faster, but dread curled in her stomach like a coiling snake. Steps thudded behind her. "Don't let them get you." A voice suddenly hissed, but Claire couldn't turn, couldn't stop. In that moment, clarity struck. Frank was not just a neighbor. He was part of something deeper, something sinister lurking in the shadows, surrounding her children. Just then, a figure emerged from the darkness, sharp and unmistakable. "Mom, was it Craig? Or an omen?" Claire halted in confusion. She could see the outline now, but it felt like stepping into a trap. "What are you doing here?" she questioned, but there was no response, just that haunting whisper swirling in the air. With breath trembling, it clicked in her mind. A horrific realization: she hadn't faced anything yet. As she prepared to answer the question, darkness enveloped her, forcing her to confront fears she never anticipated. Why was she being watched? What else would she discover? The growling shadows seemed to beckon her closer, but it wasn't just the air that had grown heavy, it was the weight of a secret that could shatter her world. Forever. Would she slip into the night with them, or would she finally unveil the truth, even if it meant losing everything? "Mom, help!" The distorted voice sent chills racing down Claire's spine, a cry threading through the very fabric of the night. She wanted to sprint toward it, to wrap her arms around Craig, but her instincts screamed that danger loomed close. "Who's there?" she called, feigning bravado. The figure stepped closer, features shrouded in murky twilight, the innocence of her child's cry twisting into something more sinister. The moment stretched unbearably. "Mom, please." Every nerve in Claire's body ignited with alarm. The voice, though unmistakably Craig's, felt warped, as if someone was molding her child's essence into a weapon against her. Footsteps echoed louder behind her, a rhythmic pursuit sharpening her instincts for escape. There was no time. She had to choose. "Craig?" Claire pushed forward, stepping into the deceptive glow of a flickering streetlight, her heart pounding against her ribcage. The shadows danced, whispering secrets she didn't want to hear. "Mom, help me." It felt like a desperate riddle, demanding a solution she wasn't ready to confront. "Where are you?" she shouted, panic clawing at her throat. The figure faltered, mouth opening, but the words were swallowed by the deep night. Claire felt drawn to the silhouette, each heartbeat urging her closer, but the creeping dread clawed tightly at her mind, screaming that something was terribly wrong. And then it flickered, the figure morphing almost imperceptibly into an elongated shadow. "Mom!" It wailed again, the pitch rising in anguish. "Stop!" she shouted, a desperate plea that echoed down the empty street, but Claire was already caught in the web of indecision. She took a single step back, glancing at the darkness pressed against her. The weight of secrets hung like fog. She needed to snap out of it. The sound of her child's distorted voice was a feeble thread tied to that shadow world, a place suffused with terror. As she teetered, two thoughts wrestled within her, a surge of maternal instinct clashing against the primal urge to run. "Stay back!" Claire hollered at the shadow, wrestling to maintain her ground, heart slamming in her chest. "Show yourself!" It laughed, a bone-chilling sound that reverberated through the stillness, altering the very air around her, laced heavily with contempt. Just then, a quick blur rushed by her, a gust of wind filled with whispers, wrapping tendrils around her legs. A glimpse of familiar face. "Mom, help!" But this time, it wasn't Craig. It was another child, their eyes wide with pleading, their pallid expression showing a depth of fear too mature for their age. "Please!" the child implored. Claire recoiled, dread seizing her veins. Had Frank's words held true? Were her children closer yet somehow so far away? "Get away!" she shouted, turning once again towards the path she had escaped. The footsteps behind her surged closer, the shuffling deafening as they cascaded like an avalanche. Heart in her throat, she sprinted toward the street, toward anything resembling safety, but the shadows stretched and twisted, coiling around her like serpents, pulling her back. The world tightened into a single focus, everything boiling down to one unthinkable question. Where are my kids? Everything felt like a nightmare blurred and bound together. The child ahead vanished with a flicker, leaving nothing but remnants of dread. Claire stumbled, world spinning, as the realization struck. Frank wasn't just a neighbor, he was a key, a link to whatever concealed horror had ensnared her family. Suddenly, the night split open with a piercing scream, her heart dropping as dread took form, racing toward her. Every cell in her body screamed to flee, but from where would she escape? And then she heard the whispers inviting her back into the dark, a crescendo of voices luring her away from reality. As the scream fractured the silence again, Claire set her jaw, her mind warring against the pull of the shadows. She needed to step into the light, to endure the truth waiting at the edge. But would the truth claim her as its own? And what would she find when she finally followed that call? Claire propelled herself forward, legs pounding on the pavement, a desperate rhythm synced with her frenzied heart. The shadows lurked, an unseen presence hot on her trail, each step a gamble between life and the consuming darkness. Where are they? The words echoed in her mind, a constant reminder of her children. Their faces were like stars fading into the night sky, the possibility of rescue slipping through her fingers. In the stark, cold embrace of the air, she felt the weight of despair drowning her, pulling her under with every passing moment. A sharp twist in the path led her to an old playground, its rusty swings swaying back and forth in the chill, creaking like bones under a phantom's touch. She halted, bracing herself against the splintered wood of the slide, breathing heavily as she scanned the area. Empty. The ghostly laughter of children echoed in her mind, strangely layered over the flitting shadows of the park. In the distance, a flash of movement caught her eye. A figure darted across the moonlit grass, brief and ethereal, just a glimpse. Claire strained, her heart seizing at the possibility. "Craig!" she called, adrenaline sharpening her voice. The figure stiffened, then vanished like vapor into the night. No answer. Footsteps. The chaos behind her rumbled ever closer, an avalanche of panic echoing off the structures around her. She couldn't stay here. Panic surged, forcing her legs to move, but every turn brought her right back to gloom, a relentless cycle that tormented her mind. That's when she caught the subtle whispering, a choir of muted voices blending together in a harrowing symphony. The pitch was higher now, like spider silk weaving through her thoughts. Stay, find us. It dripped like poison, lacing the air around her with dread. Claire's breath quickened. Were they luring her deeper? Suddenly, the figure returned, clearer this time. A child, but not Craig. Fear knotted in her stomach as she stepped closer, squinting through the dark. The child's face, twisted and pale, reflected no innocence. This way, the child beckoned, a skeletal hand pointing towards the thicket. Torn between dread and hope, Claire hesitated, her instinct screaming for her to turn back. But the child's eyes were starkly familiar. They bore a resemblance to her son, a shade of lost innocence trapped in a world she struggled to comprehend. Please, Claire choked out, those desperate pleas shattering her breath. Where are my children? The child's mouth moved, yet no sound escaped, only that insidious laughter curled back to her ears, slithering deep as shadows enveloped her completely. Claire's heart, that beating drum of terror, synchronized with the whispers, the past clashing with an unbearable present. A flicker of resolve surged. I can't stay here. She shouted into the abyss, understanding they were digging for her despair. The shadows around her shifted, morphing into grotesque shapes as if they fed off her fear. Help us, they crooned, a chorus of tainted laughter floating through the air. The park began to feel like it was closing in, branches drooping like skeletal hands ready to wrap around her throat. Forcing herself to breathe, Claire pushed past the temptation to yield to their seductive call. She frantically searched for a way out. Everything felt wrong, the night taking strange shapes, eerie shadows blending and stretching, and then, a single thread of light broke the oppressive dark ahead, a glimmer of hope, illuminating a path through the trees. Was it real? Mom! Help! Another voice wailed from the depths. Was that Craig? Fighting the crushing weight of despair, Claire bolted towards the light, each step a leap of faith into the unknown. The laughter of the shadows grew louder, more frantic, as if they were enraged at her defiance. With each stride, the light pulsed brighter, but so did the screams, echoes of truth and fear intertwining, reaching for her, claws scraping at her skin. She refused to look back. A last wild dash, and just as her fingers stretched toward the light, it flickered violently. Could they pull her under? Before she reached the safety? Would they claim her to feed their appetite for despair? A voice, familiar now, sliced through the cacophony. Mom. And then everything went dark, swallowed whole by the insatiable night, but just as clarity began to slip away, Claire felt a hand wrap around her wrist, a fierce grip anchoring her to reality. And in that fragile moment, she realized that sometimes the darkness can be more than just fear, it can also be the fractured hope waiting to be reclaimed. What lay beyond that darkness? Claire's breath caught in her throat as the shadows shifted once more, tightening around her. She had to know the depths of the truth that awaited her, even if it meant confronting her worst fears. Would she disentangle herself from the grip of the shadows, or would she descend deeper into the darkness that sought to claim her? A relentless cold gripped Claire's skin as the shadows melted away, revealing a scene that sent a wave of icy dread rushing through her. They stood in a dimly lit clearing, trees looming like watchful giants, their gnarled branches casting twisted shapes against the ground. The hand around her wrist tightened, its grip reassuring yet unnerving. Mom! The call echoed again, this time more desperate. A flicker of hope ignited in her chest, almost overpowering her instinct to flee. Where are you? Claire shouted, scanning the area, but only silence replied now, thick and suffocating. The child, still beside her, bore that twisted smile, one that made Claire's stomach churn. We are here, it giggled softly, dark eyes glistening with a knowing light. Claire stepped back, body tensing. No, she whispered, realizing the truth behind the child's haunting mimicry. These weren't her children, they were twisted remnants of something far more sinister. "Come play," another voice chimed from the trees, icy tone wrapping around her like a freezing wind. She turned, heart pounding, as silhouettes shifted just beyond the reach of the light. The shadows were alive, crawling closer, eager with anticipation. "They're waiting, Mom. Come join us." With each pull of her thoughts toward that beckoning darkness, Claire felt echoes of laughter wrap around her mind. Vivid memories filled her head, replaying yesterday's laughter at home, the warmth of hugs, her children nestled under thick blankets. If these shadows fed on despair, they were feasting now. She couldn't allow them to steal those memories. "Get away from me!" Claire screamed, ripping her wrist free from the child's grip. The air thickened as she stumbled backward, breathing ragged and fast. The laughter dulled slightly, rippling through the shadows like a fading echo, but as she turned to run, a figure stepped from the depths of the trees, a man, tall and shrouded in darkness. He wore tattered clothes, the kind that looked like they had walked straight out of a nightmare, and his face, a paler shade of the moonlit sky, was etched with a smirk that sent chills cascading down her spine. "Did you think you could escape?" he whispered, voice smooth and chilling at once. "You're not in control here." A jolt of terror struck Claire, urging her feet to move, yet the ground beneath her felt like quicksand, sticky and boundless. She wanted to scream, shout, anything to break through the web of terror that wrapped tighter around her. "Stay!" the man commanded with a menacing wave of his hand. And suddenly, the trees swayed violently, branches snapping, their wooden fingers grasping toward her, as if trying to pull her into their embrace. "No," she gasped, adrenaline surging. "Let me go." In that moment, the child lunged forward again, shrieking. "Mom! Help us!" Claire's heart lurched, recognizing the words that echoed too closely to her own. There was something there, buried, close enough for her to feel. The shadows swirled in response to her fear, pulsating with fury. She felt the barrier of darkness closing in. They were all drawn to her vulnerability, ready to feast further on her despair. "Mom! Don't listen!" a voice rang out, sharp and clear. "Craig!" She spun around, desperate to find him in the chaos. The darkness flickered, revealing a glimpse of a figure, small but steady, fighting through the haze. "I'm here!" he yelled, voice cracking but resolute, pushing his way through the chaos. Hope surged in her again, but the ground trembled, reminding her of the horror festering around them. "Tell me where!" Claire shouted, the shadows thrumming in anger as they sensed the shift in her resolve. "Trust me," Craig's voice came again, urgent. "Run to the light." But as Claire prepared to flee, the eerie man stepped closer. "You think you can leave? The darkness belongs to you now." The shadows pressed against her, the cacophony of laughter drowned out her thoughts. Claire's mind raced, heart hammering in her chest. This was no innocent playground, nor was it a quest for her children. It was a labyrinth of her own making, a twisted echo of her fears seeking to ensnare her in despair. "Listen to him!" the child shouted, and suddenly the night held its breath. Before she could respond, the figure of Craig flickered as if caught between this world and the next. With a wild, desperate leap, Claire flung herself toward the light, not knowing what lay ahead. Would she find her son or become another lost soul in this suffocating darkness that fed on fear? And then, a deafening silence fell, broken only by her frantic heart. What truth awaited her in the encroaching light? A blinding flash engulfed Claire as she barreled into the light. The moment her feet hit the ground, a piercing sound pierced through the silence, a shriek that seemed to claw at her ears. She stumbled, chest heaving, the brightness washing over her like a deluge, banishing shadows but not the fear that clung to her like a shroud. "Mom!" Craig's voice broke through the haze as he darted closer, barely staying in focus. He reached out for her, his small frame flickering like a fragile flame in the night. "We have to go now. Craig!" She lunged at him, but a sudden rush of cold stole her breath. The light crackled and dimmed, the warmth evaporating as quickly as it came. The trees morphed again, twisting as they creaked and groaned, a monstrous symphony of despair. "No!" Claire cried, panic surging anew. She couldn't let them take him, not again. "We were just forget where we were," Craig yelled, fear sparking in his eyes like dry leaves in a wildfire. "Run!" But something lurked in the edges of the light, the dark man's laughter echoing in her mind like a ghostly chant. "You believe the light can save you, don't you?" Before she could fully comprehend, the ground trembled beneath her, jagged roots grasping her ankles as if needing her despair to regenerate. Shadows writhed, stretching towards her with sharp, grasping fingers. "Mom, please." Craig's voice quavered, a thin thread of hope she couldn't afford to break. She struggled against the roots' tightening grip, heart pounding like a war drum. "Craig! Hold on." Her voice cracked under the weight of impending dread. He darted around her, searching, but each step was pushing him further into the maw of darkness just outside the light's desperate reach. The trees loomed closer, their branches swaying ominously, like moths drawn to a flame. "Craig!" He froze, eyes wide, peering over his shoulder. "I see them, Mom. They're coming." The shadows bulged as if breathing, gathering momentum, the light dimming further. Claire summoned every ounce of will she had left. "We have to push through. Just stay with me," she shouted, pulling him closer, reminding herself not to let go. But from the corner of her eye, the child with the twisted smile re-emerged, floating above their heads, laughing sweetly yet cruelly. "Join us," it taunted, voice weeping sweetness that dripped with malice. "He can't escape. He's ours." "No!" Claire screamed, flinging her arms around Craig, warmth a cinch against the cold creeping closer. "You can't have him." Suddenly, the dark man appeared again, towering above them, his voice low and serpentine. "It's not him you should fear, Claire. It's the truth that binds you." The shadows whispered ominously, words hanging heavy in the air, a conspiracy of fears veiling the truth behind her memories. Just as she felt the darkness close in, Craig grasped her hand tight. "Mom, don't listen." With those words, a jolt surged through Claire, a mix of fear and defiance coursing through her veins. The ground churned beneath her, but she wasn't about to lose him in this unimaginable horror. "Turn away from it," she cried, yanking Craig toward her, clinging to the flicker of bravery that remained. "We're stronger than them." But as they turned, a blinding flash erupted from the shadows. A hand shot out, barely grazing her shoulder. A loud crack split the air, and the ground beneath them began to crumble. Heart racing, Claire felt a terrifying rush of wind. The cacophony rose to a deafening roar, pulling everything around her into chaos. "Mom!" Craig cried, but the words were drowned out by swirling darkness swallowing the light whole. Just as the last glimmer faded, Claire felt a chilling grip around her throat. Was it the shadows? Or was it the truth that isolation and fear had always been lurking, waiting to consume them both? A heartbeat later, everything turned black. The silence weighed heavy, her heart thundering in the void. And then a whisper cut through the darkness. "Remember who you are." Was that the child's voice? Her own? The question clung to her mind like a vine, suffocating. What truth awaited her in the depths of this harrowing void? Darkness wrapped around Claire, thick and suffocating. She felt suspended in a world devoid of time, her mind racing. Thoughts ricocheted like echoes in a cavern. Where was Craig? The void swallowed her cries, her desperation drowning in the silence. Panic clawed at her throat, each heartbeat a reminder of the boy who needed her. Then, a flicker of something, a shadow cutting through the thick black. Claire squinted. Was it a figure? The darkness seemed to ripple, and as it did, faces began to form. Disembodied eyes stared back, hollow and accusing. Voices whispered, a cacophony of secrets entwined with sorrow. Mom, the soft, trembling plea broke the terrifying illusion. Claire's heart jolted. "Craig! Craig!" she called, straining against the crushing absence. "Mom, I'm scared." His voice came from the depths, distant yet clear. She felt a surge of hope amidst the despair. Fueled by that hope, she reached out, struggling to follow the sound. As she moved, the darkness stirred, twisting around her as if alive. Shadows coiled around her limbs, urging her to stop, to succumb to the fear that had brought her here. "You don't belong," whispered the shadows, the sound dripping with venom. "Let go." "No!" Claire shouted, her defiance igniting a spark of light within her. I want to lose him. Not again." Forcing herself to fight against the shadows, she continued to surge forward. The faces wavered, dissolving like smoke, their whispers fading into a haunting melody that echoed her own fears. "You are nothing, you'll never escape." But there it was again, a call that pulled her like a thread through the darkness. "Mom, help me." She stumbled, falling to her knees. And in that moment, a flood of memories rushed over her, rising like the tide. Laughter in sunlight, the scent of pine in the air, the warmth of a hug from Craig. She remembered the faces of the people she loved, moments of joy laced with a love that was a lifeline against despair. "Remember who you are," the strange voice had returned, this time resonating deep within her. Claire's heart pounded, ignited by a fierce love. She focused on Craig, visualizing every moment they had shared. With each image, the shadows writhed, shrieking in anger, closing in on her. But she didn't waver. "I am his mother. I will fight for him." The shadows recoiled, momentarily blindsided. Claire took the chance to push through, digging deep within herself as if her very soul was a lantern blazing against the night. Suddenly, she broke into a clearing. Brightness soared around her, radiant with warmth and clarity. She looked up, breathless. "Mom!" Craig was here, his small figure illuminated by the fierce light. He was surrounded by warmth, and although the tendrils of darkness still loomed around the edges, they struggled to cross the threshold. But as she reached for him, a roar erupted, shaking the air. The dark man materialized before them, eyes glinting with malice as he tore through the light. His laughter rolled like thunder. "You think you can escape me? Your truth is more powerful than you know." Terrified, Claire held her son close. She couldn't let the darkness win, not now, not ever. "Run, Craig. We have to go," she shouted, determination flooding her veins. "No." The dark figure's voice curled around her, pulling at her like a predator stalking prey. "You need to embrace the truth. You can't save him until you face it." The shadows surged forward, but Claire knew she couldn't hesitate. There was no turning back. "The truth?" she cried, glancing at Craig. "I want to be afraid. I'll embrace it." With that, she steadied herself, feeling courage rise like a flame within her. She ran towards the light, her heart pounding, dragging Craig along with her. The darkness thrashed, screaming with rage, but as they raced deeper into the light, a chilling realization struck Claire. What truth lay beyond the light? Would it be a salvation, or something far worse? The question hung heavy in the air, waiting for an answer as they plunged into the unknown. The light engulfed them, its intensity blinding. As they stepped through, Claire felt a fierce heat wash over her, cleansing yet terrifying. The warmth pulsed around her like a heartbeat, wrapping her in its embrace. But the darkness clung at the edges, its tendrils still snapping, seeking entry, seeking power. "Mom?" Craig tugged at her sleeve, eyes wide, filled with both wonder and fear. "Hold on tight," Claire whispered, her own voice trembling at the edges. The shadows twitched just beyond their reach, frustration etching deeper lines into the dark man's face. "Do you know the truth, Claire?" he hissed, his voice slithering through the brightness. "The world is built on lies. Yours began the moment you turned your back on him." "Shut up." she cried, instinctively shielding Craig. "You're lying. I did everything for him." The air thickened with tension, electric and foreboding. "Everything?" The dark figure's grin spread, twisted and wrong. "You could have saved him, but your fear blinded you. You didn't face what mattered." The brightness flickered, plunging them into brief, suffocating darkness. Claire felt panic rise again, the choking grip of dread seeping back into her veins. "Focus, Claire." The voice was insistent, thrusting her back to her memories, the warmth of Craig's laughter, the way he'd curl into her after a bad dream. But then it shifted. She saw their home, the shadows lurking in the corners. The arguments. The isolation that crept in after his father left. That truth hung heavy like a specter. "Mom?" Craig's voice splintered her thoughts. "What if it's not safe? What if it's a trick?" The dark man chuckled, low and guttural. "Ah, precious little boy. She has fed you a fairy tale. There's no safety here. Only the inevitable. Don't listen." Claire cried, but her heart sank at his words. She thought about every moment she questioned herself. Every night she lay awake, letting fear devour certainty, letting shadows stake their claims. Was he right? "Your truth, Claire, it's a burden you must embrace," he continued, slowly advancing into the luminous space. "What happened to the boy who wouldn't be afraid? Where did that courage go?" The brightness dimmed again, and anxiety surged. Claire desperately grasped Craig's hand. "I'm not leaving you," she whispered fiercely. "Whatever it is, we're facing it together." Suddenly, the shimmering light flickered violently, engulfing them both as the dark man lunged. "No!" Claire screamed, the brightness exploding outward. It was a blinding flash, a moment suspended in time where fear collided with hope. She knew if she faltered, the darkness would swallow them both. When the light faded, they stood on the precipice of a vast, empty landscape. The ground was barren, cracked like it hadn't seen water in decades. Gray clouds loomed overhead, swirling in an angry vortex. The dark man was gone, but the lingering shadows whispered taunts, echoing from all directions. "Where are we?" Craig's voice trembled, unease pouring from him as he clutched his mother's hand tighter. Claire looked around, there was an unsettling stillness that weighed down the air. "I don't know, but we'll find our way back. We have to." And then, in the distance, a figure appeared from the haze, staggering towards them hollow-eyed, mouth open in a soundless scream. Her heart raced. "Stay behind me," Claire ordered, pushing Craig back, her body instinctively bracing for a fight. The figure continued to approach, the darkness swirling around it like a living shroud. Each step carried a heaviness, a dread that settled over them like a blanket. Claire's breath quickened as she took a cautious step forward, curiosity mingling with fear. What had she awakened? And what was this new nightmare they were walking into? The figure lurched closer, shrouded in shadows, waiting to unveil its secrets. The figure moved slowly, dragging its feet through the cracked earth. Every step seemed like an echo of despair. Claire's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat against the suffocating silence. Craig trembled behind her, his small body pressed tightly against her, and all she could think was to shield him from whatever lay ahead. "Who are you?" she yelled, trying to sound braver than she felt. "What do you want?" The figure stopped. Its head tilted to one side, the hollow eyes exploring her features with a haunting intensity. Claire felt a chill crawl up her spine, as if the very air conspired against her. The thing that once resembled a person opened its mouth wider, but no sound emerged. Instead, it pointed toward the horizon, the direction buried beneath dark clouds swirling aggressively. She followed its feeble gesture, squinting through the gloom. She could see it now, scattered shapes, remnants of something once vibrant, choked in decay. There were pieces of broken buildings jutting out from the barren landscape, rusting metal twisted into grotesque forms, and shadows flitting about, dancing just out of reach. You shouldn't be here, the figure finally managed to rasp, its voice like gravel sliding down a steep slope. None of you. What do you mean? Claire shouted back, edging forward despite the voice of caution echoing in her head. The hollow eyes bore into her, and she felt herself starting to forget the world they came from, forget the warmth of their last memory together before this nightmare began. They've come back. The ones who lost their way. They want. The figure lifted its arms weakly, as if it were grasping for something ethereal. What do they want? Craig's voice was small, but it rang with the urgency of youth, seeking answers like lifelines. The figure flinched as if struck. In an instant, it collapsed to the ground, writhing in the dirt. Claire gasped, instinctively pulling Craig closer as the creature began to convulse, its body twisting unnaturally. Shadows swirled around it, coiling like snakes, choking the breath from the air. "Mom, what's happening?" Craig whimpered, and the fear in his voice shattered Claire's composure. "Stay back," she commanded, raising her hands as though she could ward off the impending terror. But the shadows gave no heed. They enveloped the figure completely, obscuring it from sight. Then came the whispers, faint, like a whisper of wind, carrying with it fragments of lost thoughts. "You shouldn't have come here," they hissed. She betrayed him, like the others. Claire's mind reeled. That voice, it was her voice, words she never spoke but resonated through her being, echoing her doubts. Was the darkness probing her soul, searching for the truth she buried deep? "They'll take you too," the figure shrieked, its voice now filled with raw terror. "If you don't leave now, you'll never return." An overwhelming panic gripped her heart. The shadows seemed to pulse in response, a living tide pushing forward. They wanted to drag her down, to steal her son, to take everything she loved. She had to make a choice: fight or run. Run! She screamed at Craig, her instincts flaring. But she couldn't bring herself to move. The memories of past failures haunted her, the guilt of not protecting him enough, the fear of the dark man's words lingering like a specter. In those agonizing moments, the ground trembled, cracking underfoot as a surge of dark energy swept across the landscape. Claire looked back, and what she saw froze her blood. From the depths, shadows crawled, rising in waves, morphing into twisted shapes that fed off fear. A low growl resonated through the tumult, ragged and primal. They weren't just lingering specters, they were gathering, waiting, hungry for a taste of despair. "Mom! Please!" Craig's voice pierced through the chaos, drawing her back to him, gathering what little courage she had left. Claire shouted, "Hold on to me." The shadows advanced, and the figure's scream echoed like a death knell. With a fierce resolve igniting within her, she grasped Craig's hand tighter, hearts pounding in unison. "We won't let them take you." She surged forward, but the ground beneath them shifted, forcing a decision, a path that could lead to either salvation or eternal darkness. What awaited them just ahead held the promise of secrets yet to be unveiled, but was that hope or yet another trap? "Let us go," she urged as she propelled them forward into the unknown. But somewhere in the back of her mind, the darkness whispered insistently what would happen when they reached the heart of this cursed realm. With their feet pounding against the cracked earth, Claire and Craig urged onward, hearts pounding as low growls echoed in the distance, angering the shadows behind them. The landscape flickered before them, a deepening gloom that felt ready to swallow them whole. They had to reach the end, the point where darkness failed to thrive. "Stay close," Claire shouted, squeezing Craig's hand tighter as they tore through the tangled remnants of a world long abandoned. The truth fluttered at the edges of her thoughts like a terrified moth, teasing her with its closeness. This journey had led her to understand that love was the beacon they needed to find their way. Hope sparkled like diamond dust amidst the horrors stretched out before them. With every desperate step, the shadows writhed, spilling forward like liquid night determined to claw them back. "Remember, Craig. We're stronger together." The boy's eyes, wide and shining with fear, bored into her soul, urging her to forge ahead. But inside, That familiar knot of doubt tightened once more. With every step, Claire grasped at memories, the shared laughter, the bedtime stories, the feel of her son's warmth beside her. Those precious moments glimmered like stars in the night sky, fighting against the encroaching darkness. They were worth the struggle. "Where do we go, Mom?" Craig's voice trembled but shimmered with an urgency that beckoned determination. Her mind raced, piecing together thoughts that floated like fog. The whispers of the shadows around them grew clearer, echoing her insecurities and regrets, but she couldn't afford to dwell in the past any longer. "There." Claire pointed toward a flicker of light breaking through darkness, a thin beam glowing against the oppressive backdrop. "We can reach it." But even as they raced toward it, the shadows howled, twisting and curling around Craig, eager to claim him. Claire felt her heart shatter as an otherworldly chill came between them, aching to sever the bond they fought so hard to protect. "Mom!" Craig shrieked, his voice splintering through the air, but Claire's instinct roared to life. "I'm here!" she cried, tearing through the skeletal grasp of shadows threatening to pull him away. With fierce determination, she lunged forward, arms outstretching as darkness clawed at her back, cold and relentless. Just as she reached Craig, a sharp pain ripped through her shoulder, something cold and wicked sliced her skin, but she pressed on, fueled by the strength of a desperate mother's love. In that moment of contact, their fingers intertwined, warmth surged between them like a tidal wave. Claire felt life coursing through her, brightening the shadows that clung to both of them. "Together!" she shouted, locking eyes with her son, whose fear had shifted to fervor, strength igniting in those youthful depths. The beam of light pulsed again, awash in warmth. Even the suffocating shadows hesitated, recoiling as Claire and Craig surged together toward freedom. The laughter of the dark figures morphed into desperate shrieks as light engulfed everything, illuminating the shadows, yanking them backward. "Keep running, Craig. Don't look back," Claire called, urging him toward the light as it wrapped around them, intensifying with each heartbeat. As they surged forward, something changed. The shadows dissolved around them, shrieking like children who had lost their grasp on innocence. Claire fought back every tear that threatened to spill, every ounce of fear seeking to suffocate her. "Where's the truth?" a voice hissed from the depths, carrying the weight of the dark man. "You can't escape your past." But it was no longer just a voice. It wafted around them, curling at the edges of their minds. Fear, doubt, regret all danced and twisted like snakes, ready to strike. But Claire stood firm, her love for Craig radiating like the blazing sun against the frigid heart of darkness. Just beyond them, the light blasted brighter. The realization hit Claire like a wave. The truth wasn't about what had happened, it was about who they were willing to be. The resolve that bubbled in her chest rose up, transforming pain into power. "Let us go." Claire squeezed Craig's hand even tighter, a fierce bond pulling them toward the horizon. With one last push, they soared through the blinding light, the desire for freedom breaking every chain the shadows had wrapped around their souls. Claire took a breath, plunging ahead, her spirit alight with the knowledge that her love could conquer even the darkest fears. Bursting forth, they emerged back into their neighborhood, breathless and disoriented, the moon casting a silvery glow across the familiar streets. The shadows melted away, leaving only the quiet chirp of the cicadas in the night breeze. "Mom?" Craig's voice was uncertain, the familiar worried shadow of the boy she knew returning. "Did we really?" "Yes, we did, Craig." Claire knelt before him, brushing the dirt from his face, looking deep into his eyes. "We faced our fears together and beat them." A soft giggle found its way between them, a reminder of innocence reclaimed. And in the cool night air, a new possibility unfolded as dawn approached. They had confronted the darkness and emerged whole. "Maybe we can play in the garden tomorrow?" Craig asked, the spark of childhood returning to his eyes. "Yes," with no shadows watching, Claire smiled, the weight lifting from her chest. They were free. As the sun began to rise, light poured into the street, signaling a new day, a new beginning. Claire's heart swelled with hope. Together, they would rebuild. No shadows would haunt them, their love would keep the darkness at bay, and for now, that was enough. But, before you go, listen up. You need to subscribe immediately to catch all the exclusive stories coming next. Smash that like button now to keep this content alive and help with the algorithm. Don't let your friends miss out either. Flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories. Let us talk about this crazy ending. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to know what happened here. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second. Let us keep this journey going together.